tease a little thing here, which is just that I also have been looking into ways to make death and character death in the game matter, and to make it more possible for someone to either that like makes choices in game of like a heroic last stand, or who maybe finds themselves in a battle they just cannot win, for that to be a really engaging and I'll say fun part of the game.
Welcome to the Character Sheet, your home for all things TTRPG and fantasy news. We are shooting at a different location today because there is some repair work going on in my house, so I have a much better backdrop than normal that makes me question where I shoot in the first place. But we have a very special guest today. You've seen him on the channel before. He's the DM for Critical Role's Campaign 4. It's the one and only Mr. Brennan Lee Mulligan. Thank you so much for joining us.
Pete, thank you as always for having me. And might I say, what a lovely backdrop you have.
Yeah, it goes on and on.
Look at that. Look at that, Maron. Oh my God.
There's a hanging beholder over there, but that's too much work to rotate the computer. But
we'll just infer the presence of a beholder, yeah.
Yes, at the very end, if we have time, I'll flip the computer out last minute. Beholder in the wall of fantasy maps. But we're here to talk Campaign 4, and one of the first things I had to ask when I saw, way back when the What is Campaign 4 video is, you had finally almost put Bird Facts behind you. Mm-hmm. You were the Critical Role Campaign 4 guy. You were American Girl Doll Shoes. Mm-hmm. Then you had to do Thjazi Fang. You thought you could just sneak that one straight through, but then War of the Falcon, like, why, you were out. Why did you drag yourself back in?
You know, I can't limit my palette. You know what I mean? Like, I can't be so afraid of the Bird Facts like tag that I avoid using one of the most like evocative thematic choices that you can. So, you know, you look at it and you're like, yeah, are we gonna be talking about falcons? Are we gonna be talking about crows? Are we gonna be talking about magpies? Yeah, we're gonna be talking about some different kinds of birds here, okay? But, you know, I can't, if we're talking about oppressive aristocratic houses and the former heroes of wars and a cry for freedom going up, I'm not the guy who invented that birds taking flight is a good visual metaphor for freedom. And so, you know, at the end of the day, what am I going to do? Am I going to say this is the Muskrats Rebellion because I'm worried about getting tagged as the Bird Facts guy? Can't do it. You know, ultimately, you got to go with the right choice for the story, even if it happens to sort of tag into one of many game changer bits that clings to your brand like molasses.
Yeah. And speaking of game changer bits, one of the other questions I had to know, Dol-Makjar, is that just a pun on Dollmaker? Are we going back to American Girl Doll Shoes again?
I had not considered that. Dol-Makjar is actually so people that are paying close attention will notice that Dol is also Dol-Rungya is the other Orcish city. So that's like an old Orcish naming convention.
Yeah, it's very Tolkien-y.
Hey, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Yes. Right, Minas Tirith, Minas Morgul. You know,
yes.
It's putting little bits of etymology like that in there. Is a nice touch. I believe I'd have to look back at my notes, but I think Makjar I had said that Makjar was either the Orcish word for the Khadi word for shield or wall or something like that. Because Dol-Makjar historically is the border. It's it's basically like you know, Araman's version of the Black Gate. It's like at the edge of their lands, and so it's the big shield wall. In this case, against dwarves, which was the big fight happening in the east of Khad.
Cool. A question that our viewers brought up a lot, and they really wanted to know, and it's kind of an interesting one, would be: was Araman something you had been kicking around for a while, or was it something that you like created whole cloth for Critical Role Campaign 4?
Little bit of both, in that there are certain ideas that are in the DNA of Araman that I've been kicking around for a long time. But I think if you're a dungeon master, you know, a lot of your ideas that you have are going into your active campaigns that you're running. But every once in a while, something will kind of sneak in that you go, huh, that's really interesting, and I'm drawn to that idea for some reason, but that doesn't feel like it applies to any of the games I'm currently running. Let me put that little volatile chemical on a shelf somewhere, and we'll come back to that later. And I think that there's when Critical Role approached me, I went, oh, we got to go to the big vault with the super volatile stuff. We got to go to the place where there are some ideas that I think, for my purposes, right? Because I've been running Umora and Worlds Beyond Number, and I've been running a lot of Dimension 20. So a lot of the ideas were actually like that weren't finding a home were traditional high fantasy, like traditional Tolkien-esque kind of high fantasy. And when Critical Role comes knocking on your door, you're like, boy, wait a minute, do I have some stuff for you guys? Hold on a sec, let me run upstairs. And you go, and I think that's sort of how it happened. So there were a lot of little germs and kernels of ideas that I had been sort of like obsessed with for a while, but they were sort of brought out into full sunlight and allowed to flourish and bloom to what they really wanted to be when Critical Role came knocking.
Well, and that answers another one of the questions that a lot of people had, which seems to be one of the differences between, setting up for a Critical Role table versus a Dimension 20 table. And it sounds like it allows you to dive into a very high fantasy concept in a way you might not have had a chance to since kind of, the Ravening War or A Crown of Candy.
There's a great thing, with Dimension 20, the freedom we have is to live in this anthology world where the genre and tone and everything changes up wildly. And obviously it's a comedy forward show, but that we get to really go like, okay, we're gonna do a full steampunk parody, and then we're going to do a film noir Inside Out, and then we're going to do, all sort of wild, different, crazy things. And for Critical Role, I think the things that were so intoxicating that I don't get to do anywhere else, right, is go, okay, create the kind of high fantasy world that is the most emblematic. Like, you've gone to all these bizarre flights of fancy that are super comedic and really high concept. It's almost like with like chefs, when it's like, okay, you've been working in this kitchen, you made all these amazing things. I want you to make the perfect 3-egg omelet with, do this thing that is so classic and so beloved, and can you do it at the height of your ability? And you go, oh my God, okay, I'm gonna let me take this as seriously as possible and try to pour all the love I have for this genre into this thing. And that's what Araman is to me. And specifically too, I think doing a large party version of that, and in this case, taking Critical Role, which is, even in campaigns 1, 2, and 3, is a lovely large table of players, and then doing this thing where they wanted to invite other people to come play with them, that we go, okay, we're gonna expand, and we're gonna look at this sort of Two Towers style or Game of Thrones style West Marches kind of game. Really, really exciting.
Amazing. And I think one of the things that the cast has talked about is how potentially lethal this setting will be, because they all said they were warned to make backup characters. And then in the very first episode, we saw Laura Bailey almost die in her introduction. And especially when, after we came back from break, you took away disadvantage, which in a way made it much more likely that she would die, because it gave her a chance to roll higher on initiative to get that one last saving throw in. So just how lethal could this setting be, and are you prepared to just start axing characters left and right if that's what left and right if that's what the dice want?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, and obviously, I will say, anyone. I had no desire to have Laura die in her introductory scene, and the odds were like, even with those scary death saving throws, the odds were still very much in her favor that one of the 4 adventurers in the room was going to figure out some way to prevent that from happening.
But then she rolled a 23.
She rolled 23. That was pretty freaky. I was like, oh, wait a minute, hold on. I think that there's for my sake, I think that one of the things I think people are very excited about in this setting is character death. Like, I've talked to some of the players who I think have sort of wistfully talked about, like, oh, if I could have an awesome death scene, or if there's and especially in a setting that is telegraphing its lethality, that's talking about how lethal it is, that has a little bit of broodingness or a time of like that. And I'll tease a little thing here, which is just that I also have been looking into ways to make death and character death in the game matter, and to make it more possible for someone to either that like makes choices in game of like a heroic last stand, or who maybe finds themselves in a battle they just cannot win, for that to be a really engaging and I'll say fun part of the game, even if it's a fun that has a lot of like sadness and tragedy to it, but still that feels really gripping and thrilling to go through the notes of a character death.
Well, that literally leads perfectly into my next question, and it's something that you and I talked about during the last Calamity series, and that is there any way that resurrection magic can even work in this setting? If the concept of resurrection magic at its core is you are calling out to your god's aid to guide a soul back to its body, but now even the clerics and the paladins and the people pretending to be clerics, cough, Wakander, cough, are just reaching out to the vague concept of a domain, something that might not even have sentience. Like, how could resurrection magic work in this setting if there's nothing on the other end to kind of push that soul back?
You're looking at a world in Araman where a lot of magic has been lost, where a lot of, we reference that Misty Step is one of the only reliable forms of teleportation in the game, and that anything sort of more heavy duty than that comes with a lot of risk, if it even works at all. We'll get into the lore as we go throughout the setting, but this is a world that has experienced a tremendous amount of change, even as it relates to character classes. Druids had to live basically in the shadows for millennia while the Shapers reigned supreme, and their worship was the primary way of interacting with divinity. And now Druids have seen, it's only been 70 years. So it's like, but it's an explosion of Druidic magic in that time. We see a little bit of Marisha's character, Murray, who's a wizard who works at the Pentevral. There are interesting things about what's going on with wizardry in this time period in this world. And I think that looking at that resurrection magic, you're exactly right. Resurrection magic, it's like, even in a place that's dealing a lot with the specter of the underworld, or that has even this sort of House Taconis, we see Octus with this little weird undead fox thing in his little undead fox familiar.
Frankenfox.
There are points of contact with the nature of death and realms beyond. But you're absolutely right. Resurrection, truly bringing someone back, is something that only ever in the history of Araman happened in legend. And it was the direct intercession of deities, right? There's older forms of D&D where gods would just not grant you certain spells, even if it was on your class list. And I think that the gods of Araman were in their time stingy like that, being like, no, you can have other third level spells, but it's got to be really special for me to clear a Revivify, even, let alone a true resurrection.
Yeah, I remember being a war cleric of Tempest, and you weren't allowed healing spells in 2nd edition.
Hell yeah, I remember it too.
All right. And then the final thing, because it was something that worried me deeply when we started off with the hanging. Did you ever, for 1 second, think about a kind of, because it would be the perfect Brennan-esque twisting of the knife to do a sort of an Incident at Owl Creek style scenario, where Thjazi gets away and he's in the car, and then we cut back and it's all but in Hal's mind, and then we just see the rope drop.
I love it, man. There were a lot of ways to go through that scene. And I think that there's to have them envision him getting away. And I think too, there was a big, it was very clear to me as well, how much the other, as we were sort of setting up the campaign, I was like, this is everyone's connected to this NPC who is marked for death. And there were a couple people that were like, I think I would be working to free him or get him off the gallows. And I was like, cool, let's do that. Let's get into that plan. And that was Laura and Labria and Alex Ward. And there were people that were just wanted to get involved in that. And it ended up making it even more heartbreaking. I actually am really grateful to them, because there was a version of it where it was just a totally somber, yep, no one can do anything. This is the end of Thjazi Fang's life. But the fact that these players were like, I really want to be trying to free him. And I went, cool, let's see that. And, everything that spins off of that, where it's like, what if the daring escape doesn't work? Do you feel like you're suddenly kind of in... There's a feeling, honestly, like when Ned Stark spoilers for Game of Thrones, when Ned Stark goes to Game of Thrones, where you're like, am I in the wrong story? Am I seeing the wrong version of these events as they unfolded? And there's something about Thjazi Fang where his remarkable life, you go, no, he, like the Princess Bride kid being like, Grandpa, you're doing it wrong. Like Thjazi Fang gets away.
She gets away, yeah.
Yeah.
You want me to tell the story?
I'm hugely grateful to our players for wanting that to happen.
I thought you were about to say, and I'm hugely grateful to Peter Falk. I was like, well,
and I am.
And who wouldn't be? All right, we know we are coming up on that 15-minute mark. I will only do 3 of these to be super fast. We always have to do it. Quick game of Magical Sword or Mid-Sized Sedan.
Great.
As they keep on making stupid car names. First up, Velfire.
A car.
It is. It's a Toyota. A Toyota Velfire.
Great.
The pattern. This pattern.
Sword.
It is. It's a Shard Blade from
Yes.
Stormlight. Aquila.
Oh. Car.
It's Kai's Holy Sword from Guilty Gear. But you went 2 for 3.
Hey, 2 for 3 is not bad. I'll take
Very
it.
quick game. Brennan, thank you so much. I know that you are incredibly busy. You have 14 other actual plays to go DM in the next several days. But thank you so much for joining us. I cannot wait to see more of Campaign 4. And as always, to the liking and the subscribing, and we will see you with a new video next time. And Brennan, as always, thank you so much.
You rule, Pete. Thank you, man.